Hi.
Okay. Can I read from there?
No, I'm just glad we're live. We're live.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yes, we talked to Carrie. All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Free. I'm Ryan. I'm the pastor and executive director here, and it's good to be with you all tonight. Welcome to all of you online people. We're glad you're part of this community wherever you're joining us from. Welcome. All right, y'all, this is to remind you, this is a community for addicts, loved ones of addicts, and spiritual refugees. And what we do here is break the silence of addiction. And there is always one thing we do not do, and y'all can shout it out on the count of three. 1, 2, 3. We don't do shame. But I will tell you some other things that are happening this evening. Well, not this evening, but coming up. First, if you are new here, Kai, you were just asking me about welcome bags. Carrie, do we have welcome bags left? We do have welcome bags. So when you leave here, if it's your first time here, you can get a welcome bag just outside on these tables when you leave out these doors. In that welcome bag, you'll find a little connect card. If you want to connect with us, we'll get you on the email list. You'll also find some fresh roasted wagon coffee. And it's some of the best coffee you'll ever have because it was roasted likely just this week back in the cafe. And there's some other stuff in there, and that's for you. So pick up a bag and take it home with you. That's from us to you. And a couple other things that happened today. One was the recovery rally. I know a few of you were at the recovery rally. Yes. Free had a booth set up there. It was, I hear there was like 50 vendors this year at the recovery rally. Really cool thing where you start at Union Station area and you march all the way to Civic Center Park. B-Rain was there. B-Rain was there the first year, like 5 years ago. Anyway, it's this public demonstration to the world that recovery is actually possible. So glad you all were there. Give yourselves a round of applause. That's put on by advocates. What's it called? Advocate for Recovery. That's right. Thank you for that. Yeah, good work from them. Hey, we have, first, if you love working with kids, we're always looking for kids to volunteer in the kids program and the back 2 rooms. So talk to Melissa before you leave. We're always needing volunteers at the 5 o'clock service and 7 o'clock service. So if that is your thing, please talk to Melissa and volunteer. There's a process you'll go through, but we're always in need of more volunteers. So if that's your thing, have at it. All right, y'all. In October, we're doing a book study. This book study is called The Mountain Is You. Anyone read it? The Mountain Is You by Brianna West. Highly recommend this book. This will also be our series in October, all 4 weeks of October. The book study is on Tuesday nights from 6 to 7. So every Tuesday in October, led by Mickey and Noelle Wysocki. And you'll just be hanging back there in the living room area. There's no sign up for this. Just get the book and start reading. Next week, we'll let you know which chapters to have read by the first week. But you can pick up the book now, go to Amazon or wherever you get your books, buy the book, start reading. You're going to enjoy this one. Okay, y'all, the way we get started here at Free is we start with the good, the celebrations. We lift up the good. Maybe you have a sobriety anniversary, or maybe you're experiencing a new thing in life, new babies, new jobs, new homes, whatever the new thing is. We want to celebrate it with you. We believe that God joins with us in the celebration. So it's a very important part of our time together. We take 3 minutes for this. If you're online, just drop your comments in the YouTube section or the Facebook section, wherever you're joining us from, whatever platform. And we'll take 3 minutes. Matt has a mic and Darren has a mic, and they will pass around a mic to you. Just raise up your hand and give us the celebration.
I'm Kai, and I just want to celebrate that my best friend Megan is here for her first time.
All right, Megan, welcome. Glad you're here.
Hello, my name is John, and I'm 25 days sober today.
Way to go, John. Congratulations, buddy.
My name is Kayla, and I'm 83 days sober today.
Way to go, Kayla.
83.
I'm Fredo, and I'm 26 days sober.
Congratulations.
Kyle, and I've got 4 years sober tomorrow.
All right, way to go, Kyle.
Hi, my name's Carrie. I wanted to give a very important update of someone very near in our community. Calvin, our home team member, is now safe in treatment and is sober for 2 weeks today.
Way to go, Calvin. We love you, buddy.
My name is Kevin, and I have 95 days sober today.
Way to go, Kevin.
Hi, my name's Cass, and my friend Nia is 90 days sober today.
All right, way to go.
Hi, I'm Kelly, and I have 177 days sober today.
Way to go, Kelly.
And I'm Chris. I have about 3 weeks sober, and I found an awesome sponsor this morning.
Way to go, Chris. Anyone else? You got 50 seconds. Who's going to take it? I knew there was someone right in the middle who had something to celebrate.
I'm Grace, and I had 90 days sober on Wednesday.
Way to go, Grace.
Any others? I'm Matt, and my son celebrated 2 years of recovery today. So,
way to go, Noah.
I'm Stacy, and I got my family back after 3 years being from a restraining order.
All right.
Awesome.
Congratulations. Oh, we got one more.
Yeah, we got one more.
We got one more.
My name's Courtney, and my little brother had a year and like 5 days today.
All right. Little brother, a year and 5 days. Very cool. Did we have one more?
My name's Chance. I'm just celebrating my dad, who's nearly 90 days and watching online live for the first time.
All right, congratulations, Dad. 90 days, that's big. Right. Matt, you going to join me up here? I do have, I think there's a CU-CSU game tonight, isn't there? The
irrelevant.
We ain't even going to celebrate it, are we? But for people that aren't here because they might be watching that, we'll just keep them in mind. Irrelevant?
We're here for the Lord, not for the rant.
Thank you, Matt. Hey, I do want to mention a great celebration. Many of you know Dara in our community. I think y'all might be watching online tonight. Dara had a diabetic episode last week, and it was a very scary moment. She was in a diabetic coma and was taken to the ICU. She was supposed to be here last Saturday, and she wasn't. And I know some of you were asking, like, where's Dara? What's happened to Dara? No one knew, but we found out the next morning. So that's where she was and still is. She's in the hospital. Martha, her mother, is with her in the hospital right now, but she is out of that coma. So this is why it's a celebration. She is speaking and breathing. The ventilator was removed, I believe, today. And so she is on her way to recovery. And Daryl, we've been praying for you, thinking about you, sending you all kinds of love, and we hope to see you soon. But let's give it a round of applause to Dara's recovery. All right, man, we got to look, our monitor's out tonight, so we've got to look at, do we have a screen to look at for our online people? So we got to turn around. Okay, so, here's Martha. You want to take the first one?
You're better with Dara or
Dara.
Martha Kaplan-Art says, celebrating that Dara is better, and we are all watching together.
All right, we celebrated early. Martha was mentioning it. Glad y'all are watching. Julie says, recovering from COVID-19. All right, Julie, we're glad you're recovering. Glad you're here with us.
Wyatt Sampson says he celebrated 60 days this past Monday. Way to go, Wyatt.
Way to go, Wyatt. Francis. Y'all remember Francis, right? Some of you know Francis. He now lives in Arkansas. 3 years yesterday. Thanks, Rev Ryan and family at Free. Proud of you, Francis. Way to do it, brother. 3 years.
Matt, my favorite name. I've got 177 days fentanyl free. Congratulations, Matt.
Way to go, Matt. Why do you like that name?
It's a biblical name.
Biblical name, that's right. Dion says, celebrating our son Tanner, who is 6 months clean and sober. Proud of you, Tanner. Way to go, buddy. And I believe that was the last one. You can, actually, I'll take that for a guest storyteller. Thank you, Matt, for joining me up here. All right, so y'all do know we are in the third week of this series called Rooted. What are you rooted in your recovery? What roots are you growing? And so tonight I want to talk about forgiveness. That's our topic, forgiveness towards others. And then next week, so it's kind of like a part two, forgiveness of self. How do we lay down that baggage that has been holding us back? But tonight it is forgiveness. So 3 weeks ago, I had the opportunity to hear a keynote speech given by George Pirro. George Pirro was a special agent for the FBI, best known for being the lead interrogator of the Iraqi leader Saddam Hussein. So this would have been back in 2004, just after Saddam's capture. George Pirro is Lebanese American. He speaks Arabic, so it made sense to choose him to be the lead interrogator of Saddam. And he told us that every single day for 7 months straight, for several hours each day, it was just him and Saddam in the room together. And he began his speech by saying Saddam was one of the most brutal dictators that the world has ever seen, and he's responsible for some of the most horrific atrocities in history. And then for the next hour and 15 minutes, he talked about Saddam as if he were an actual human being. He told us that Saddam didn't have a father figure in his life, that he had a very difficult childhood. He was raised in extreme poverty. He told us of his fondness for his mother. And he wasn't telling us any of this to in any way excuse his poor behavior. But what was stunning to me was for an hour and 15 minutes, there was no name calling. There was no motives of revenge. There was no, I can't wait to see him suffer the way he made other people suffer. I mean, when he talked about him, it was as if he were free from the feelings connected to him. And at the end of the night, after his keynote, I couldn't help but wonder, dude, you spent 7 months with this brutal dictator and the awful stories that you must have heard about what he did to his own people, men, women, and children. I mean, did you go deeper into your hate for him, or were you somehow able to see his humanity? You see, how are we to forgive our enemies? You know, I was just a few months into being a full-time pastor, my first full-time gig. And I got a call from David. And there was 3 pastors on staff, but the other 2 pastors were away that week, so I took the phone call. And David and Diana, whom I did not know prior to this, they were asking me if I could do their daughter's funeral. And David went on to tell me that Brittany, their daughter, was 21 years old, and the night before we were talking, she was leaving work late that night, and she was taken by a very senseless act of violence. She was murdered that night. And this was my very first funeral. I hadn't done one of these funerals before, hadn't done a funeral at all. And I remained in contact with them. We still remain good friends to this day, dear friends, Dave and Diana and their family. And a few years passed by after that funeral, and I was putting a group together that would meet in our living room for 4 weeks, one night a week on Wednesday nights, and I was calling this group Loving Your Enemies. And because at that time in my life, I was being so transformed by this Jesus stuff of loving your enemies and forgiveness. And I was a few years into my recovery, so I had worked through my resentments and I made amends to people. And I was so transformed by how do we love our enemies and this forgiveness stuff. And what would happen if we get 10 other people in our living room and we talk about the things that have the power to transform us the most, like loving your enemies? And so we launched the signups, and the very first people to sign up were David and Diana. And I thought, man, this is going to be tough. I mean, this stuff just got real because I know their story. I know what happened. I did the funeral. And we're going to be talking about loving your enemies. So on that fourth week, on that last Wednesday we were together, I closed the evening by inviting them into just popcorn-style prayer. I said, I'm going to close. We'll have a moment of silence. And if anyone wants to offer up a prayer using words, saying it out loud, well, that's your time. And y'all, we sat in that living room for well over a minute of silence. No one said anything, which is actually pretty awkward to sit with 10 people in your living room and it's complete silence for over a minute. It feels like an eternity. And then David started to pray. And still to this day, I can tell you it is the most powerful prayer I've ever heard. He had his eyes closed real tightly, and his fists were clenched, and he was hitting his legs like this. And he said, God, I am so angry. And he's fighting back tears, and he's choked up, and he says, God, help me forgive Dustin. I had known them for a few years at this point, did their daughter's funeral. I had never heard the name of the one who took their daughter. God, help me forgive Dustin. You see, how are we to forgive our enemies? And maybe you are here tonight and you have someone in your life who has hurt you, who has wounded you, who has betrayed you, and the last thing you want to talk about is forgiveness. And you would say to me, Ryan, you don't know what it was like. You don't know what that person or those people did, and I cannot forgive them. And I would ask you in the same breath, but do you want to be free? Because forgiveness is about you being free. You see, can you forgive your worst enemy and become a channel through which God's love flows to them? It's a really uncomfortable question, isn't it? And it is the question that the book of Jonah engages throughout that book. And if you haven't read the book of Jonah, I highly encourage it. Find some time to read it this week. It's short. It's found in the Old Testament or the Hebrew Bible. It's only 4 chapters. You can read it in just a few minutes. Take time and read through the book of Jonah. It's filled with humor and satire and really profound themes of forgiveness. Once upon a time, around the 8th century BC, the word of the Lord came to Jonah. It's how the book opens. What did God say to Jonah? Go at once to Nineveh, that impressively large city, the center of empire, and denounce it for their evil which has come up before me. Now, to understand the rest of the book of Jonah, you have to know something about Nineveh. Nineveh is the capital of Assyria, and the Assyrians were known for being this brutal, oppressive, cruel empire who completely crushed other nations, Israel being one of them. Where's Jonah from? Jonah's from Israel. We have stories that tell us about what the Assyrians did to Jonah's people. So see, we have to understand something about Assyria. This is not just some nation with which the Israelites have some religious disagreements. No, this is an evil empire, a mortal enemy whose fundamental purpose is to destroy Jonah's people. So here we have Jonah, who's an Israelite, being called by God to deliver a message of warning and judgment to the capital city of Assyria called Nineveh. And what does Jonah say? He said, God, I ain't going. I don't care what you say. I don't care what happens. I'm not going to those people. So Jonah, some of y'all know the story. Jonah gets on a boat. And this boat is headed for the city of Tarshish, which is the exact opposite direction of Nineveh. He gets on this boat, they're on the open seas, and a major storm hits. Now, in the ancient world, when a major storm hits on the open seas and you're in it, the thinking was the gods are against us. Someone did something to piss off the gods and they're angry, and this is retaliation. So they look at Jonah because someone had to do something wrong and we need to make a sacrifice. Jonah, you're the new guy here. You must have done something wrong. The gods are angry, so you, my friend, are getting thrown overboard. So they pick him up and they throw him in the ocean. Now, the text tells us that God provides a big fish to swallow Jonah, and he's in the belly of this big fish for 3 days and 3 nights where he's praying, and then not even this big fish could stomach Jonah, so it vomits him onto a beach. Now, where is this beach? It just so happens to be right near Nineveh. Now, let's take a pause, side note for just a moment. Jonah was swallowed by a big fish, and he survives in the belly of this big fish for 3 days and 3 nights. Then he's puked out on a beach. Some of you are saying to yourself right now, come on, Ryan. Well, why are we even looking at this story? I mean, you don't believe in fairy tales, do you? And you don't believe that this can actually be true, right? I mean, this is what causes thinking people to turn away from God. This is what causes thinking people to actually turn away from texts like the Bible. Why are we looking at this story? And then there's other people, and particularly in camps like religious fundamentalism, who will say, well, wait a minute. I mean, if you don't believe that this actually happened, if you don't believe that this is a literal, historical event, then you just don't believe the Bible. And for me, the Bible says it, I believe it, that settles it. And do you see, when we get in debates like these, they will always be boring because we can completely miss the point of Israelites and Assyrians and God's call to be a light to all people, especially your enemies. And I think if the author of Jonah were to join us in one of these boring conversations, I think he would stand up and say, are you people freaking serious right now? You just heard this story, and that's your question, whether or not it literally happened? Do you see how we can so easily miss the point? Don't miss the point. So God calls Jonah for a second time. Jonah, I want you to go to Nineveh. Now, Jonah's on the beach. He's right near Nineveh. So he says, fine. I'm going to go to Nineveh, God. I'm going to give the sermon, but you need to know I'm putting no effort into this. I'm giving it no energy, and I'm going to give the worst sermon ever. And it was the worst sermon ever. In the Hebrew language, it was 5 words. In our English, it's a few more words. Here's what he said to them. Just 40 days more, and Nineveh will be overthrown. This is his sermon while walking through the middle of the city. And there's silence. And then the text tells us that immediately after this terrible sermon, the people turn to God. What? Even the king turns to God. Everyone in Nineveh turns to God. They start repenting and sitting in ashes, which is a sign of mourning. Even the king is sitting in ashes. And he says that everything and everyone has to repent and turn towards God. And who knows, if we do this, God may not be so angry with us and we might not die. How does God respond? God saw what they were doing, that they had seized their evil behavior, so God stopped planning to destroy them, and he didn't do it. And Jonah is absolutely furious. He's angry. In fact, the whole last chapter is all about Jonah's anger. Here's what he says. But Jonah thought this was utterly wrong, and he became angry. He prayed to the Lord, come on, Lord. Now, if you really want to pray, that's how you want to start it. Come on, Lord. Wasn't this precisely my point when I was back in my own land? This is why I fled to Tarshish earlier. Because I know that you are a gracious and compassionate God, slow to anger and abounding in love, which, by the way, is a direct quote from Psalm 145. Hold on to that. Abounding in love and willing not to destroy. At this point, Lord, you may as well take my life from me because it would be better for me to die than to live. Has anyone ever been that angry? It would just be better for me to die. I just want to die, Lord. I don't even want to live anymore. I'm that angry. You see, but Jonah has to go back to his people. You can understand the anger, right? I mean, when he gets back to his hometown, the people are going to say to him, Jonah, tell us how it went, man. Tell us what God did to destroy them. Don't leave out any details. We want to hear, how much did they suffer? And Jonah's got to say, well, y'all, I tried everything to get out of it. Man, let me tell you about the big fish. I mean, I tried everything, and I even gave the worst sermon ever. And the people turn to God. And y'all know how God is. And they would say, wait a minute, you mean they're still alive? They weren't destroyed, Jonah. This is not how we wanted it to end. And the book of Jonah, the last verse, ends with God asking the most uncomfortable question. Jonah, should I not be concerned about Nineveh, that great city in which there are more than 120,000 people who can't tell their right hand from their left hand? In other words, Jonah, shouldn't I not love them too? God extends grace, mercy, compassion, forgiveness, and Jonah's angry. At this point, he's sitting under a bush and it's withered from the sun, and he's just sitting there getting angrier and angrier. And as you read chapter 4, you can almost hear God asking Jonah, Jonah, really, seriously, you want me to start withholding love? You want me to start withholding forgiveness? Ryan, you really want me to start withholding compassion for certain people? You want me to start withholding mercy and love and forgiveness? Really? Ryan, do you remember your own story? Jonah, how's this going to work out for you, man? Why didn't Jonah want to go to Nineveh? Because God, they have been hurting my people for decades, and you haven't done a damn thing about it. It's almost like you just sat back and watched, and now you actually want me to go to them? No, God, I ain't going. Because see, the problem is, I know you. I know how you are. You are gracious. You are slow to anger, abounding in love. You are good to all. And I don't want them to have that. I want them to suffer the way they have made my people suffer. I don't want them to have an opportunity at forgiveness because they don't deserve it. You see, can you forgive your enemy and be a channel through which God's love flows from you to them? And the truth is, some of you are here tonight and you have been hurt by someone. You've been wounded. You've been betrayed by an individual or by a group of people, or perhaps even an institution, maybe even a religious institution. And you've got some Ninevehs in your life. You just can't go there. It doesn't matter what that still small voice is saying to you. You cannot go to the forgiveness for you is so far off. No, God, I ain't going. I don't care what you say. I don't care what happens. I ain't going to them. And here's the kicker. It is not because you are distant from God. It's actually the very opposite. It's because you know God. You know how God is. And your thinking is, if I turn this thing over, if I turn these people over to you, you are going to mishandle it. You're going to screw it. You're going to do something really stupid like love them and offer compassion and offer forgiveness, and they don't deserve it. I don't want them to have that. You see, forgiveness is when you are able to let go of all the hate, all the anger, all the baggage, all the fantasies of revenge that have been consuming you. How do you know when you have entered into the flow of forgiveness? Those things no longer hold your heart captive. You know the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. It gives us this very necessary reminder on page 64. It says that resentment is the number one offender. It destroys more alcoholics than anything else. From it stem all forms of spiritual disease. And it's true, isn't it? I mean, how many people do you know that they get into their journey of recovery, but they haven't yet dealt with the stuff that's in here, all the pain, they tried to go over it, all the anger, they tried to go around it, all the baggage, you try to just sweep it away and go under it. And at some point, they find themselves back with the drink or back with the drugs, and you're like, man, I don't know how it happened. Y'all, if you don't deal with your resentments, all the pain, anger, baggage, if you don't deal with it, it will destroy you. It will keep you from everything good. I can affirm to you that this is true. Not being able to forgive kept me drunk for a really long time. Because, see, I could not let go of all those things that happened when I was a little boy. I had people in my life that I couldn't even say their name. It brought up too much pain, too much rage. I could call them names, but I could not say their name. And God, where were you? God, where were you? Because it's almost like you just sat and watched it happen. Where were you? And now you want me to trust you with them? Come on. You know, for the first 2 years and 8 months of my sobriety, and I do not recommend this, please do not follow my footsteps in this one. Deal with your resentment sooner than I did. For the first 2 years and 8 months of my sobriety, I was just like Jonah. I was so angry enough to die. And then September 1st of 2016 came. And I woke up that morning. I didn't sleep well that night. I woke up before the sun came up, and I got my car and I drove to the church to go into my office. And I sat in my office, and I was going to go to the AA meeting that morning that was at 6:45 a.m., but I was there super early. And so I'm hashing it out with God. And the beautiful thing about hashing it out with God is if you're quiet for long enough, you can actually have God speak back to you. And it was so clear to me that day. God said to me, Ryan, if you want to live, if you want to be free, you are going to have to forgive. See, at this point, I had been freed in my mind from the obsession of the drink, which if you've been there, you know it's an absolute miracle. But on September 1st of 2016, I started the process, the journey of being freed in my heart from all the hate, the anger, and the hurt, and the pain, and the baggage. And I sat in my office. Man, I skipped that AA meeting. I closed my office doors. I opened up my iPad, and I turned on a song, and I turned it all the way up. And I hit the repeat button, and the song just played on repeat. And man, I wept. I wept like a baby. And I was praying, God, help me forgive. Help me to forgive. I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to let go. I'm so scared of letting go. I'm so scared of what's going to happen. God, help me forgive. God, help me forgive. God, help me forgive. And why do I call it a process, by the way? Because some of you know forgiveness doesn't always happen overnight. It's a process. Sometimes it's a long process. You see, but what I had to learn was you are not free if you are holding on to all the hurt, all the pain, all the baggage, all the resentments. If you cannot say their name, you aren't free. If you are secretly hoping for them to suffer, you aren't free. If something bad happening to them has a way of making you feel good, you aren't free. And forgiveness is about you being free. You see, it's true. When you don't forgive, if you don't have a practice of forgiveness, if you are holding on to all that baggage, it is only hurting you. I know we think, no, it's hurting them. No, it's only hurting you. And it's true. If you don't forgive, it's like you drinking the poison and expecting the other person to die. And forgiveness is about you being free. You see, maybe the first step, if you are wrestling with forgiveness in your life, maybe the first step for you is admitting, and I know it's really hard, it'll cause all sorts of pain, admitting that God loves them too. You see, what will happen if you let go? Now, it doesn't mean you're condoning their actions. It doesn't mean that there's not going to be consequences for their actions. It doesn't mean that you are going to Forgive and forget. Forgetting may be the worst possible thing you can do. You need to remember so that you might have boundaries. It doesn't even necessarily mean that you will be reconciled to that person. Maybe, maybe not. But it is about releasing them from your hands and placing them into better hands. Maybe your first prayer is simply, God, help me to forgive. God, help me forgive. God, help me forgive. I don't know how to do it. God, help me forgive. The song that I played in my office that morning on repeat, because y'all do know sometimes I go to Eminem, sometimes I go to Dax, sometimes I'll go to Lincoln Park. I mean, you name it, we're all over the place, and we play that here. But the song I played in my office that morning was a straight up worship song, and I played it on repeat. It's a song called Psalm 145. Lord, you are gracious, you are slow to anger, abounding in love, good to all. And I played it on repeat. It's a song by Shane and Shane. We're going to play that song now. And some worship songs are a little longer. And if you're sitting here saying, wait, worship, I thought we were, no, you'll be okay. You'll be okay. You can do it. I want to invite you during this time. I know this is not a Catholic Mass, but if you want to kneel at your seat, feel free to do so. If you want to just read the lyrics on the screen and meditate on Psalm 145, feel free to do so. If you want to come up to this stage, also known as an altar, and you want to pray at this altar, feel free to do so. If you are wrestling with forgiveness, I would ask you, do you want to be free? Who do you need to forgive? Who do you need to let go of? So for the next 6 minutes, I would invite you to be quiet, be still, and enter a time of prayer and meditation. This time is yours. can't wait for you to meet my friend, Rielly Christine. Rielly is here, and she is just over 2 years sober. And just to give you a little preface to her story, she's got a very powerful story of forgiveness that she's going to share. And she's had a tumultuous relationship with her mother, and she is living this stuff now, this forgiveness stuff. And I said, hey, would you come share that with us? So Rielly is here tonight. Help me welcome Rielly to the living room. Welcome back, Rielly. Do you feel more nervous or less nervous since we did this at 5 o'clock?
You know, all I keep thinking is like, am I going to be able to say the same things I said earlier?
Well, you know, if you don't, no one's going to know.
Okay, that's true.
I mean, don't totally change your story because that'd be creepy.
Yeah, that'd be a little weird.
Let's jump into things. So when we met, you told me that drinking gave you a feeling. We all know about that feeling, and we all chase those feelings, but you kept drinking for that feeling. And I do want you to describe what drinking did for you, particularly in relationship with that tumultuous relationship.
Right. So I had my first drink when I was about 9, and I will never forget that feeling of like warmth. And for whatever reason, for me, it was protection that first drink gave me. And I spent the next few years chasing that, right? And I was about 12 when I had my next drink, and then I was 15 when I just went ham and started really drinking. And I really felt as though every shot, every drink I was taking was this armor I was putting on, another piece of armor that I was able to use against the things that I couldn't seem to control, which in my situation was my family and the abuse that I had dealt with growing up.
Yeah, and I don't want to say anything you didn't tell me I could say publicly, so if I could mention, you were molested at a young age. Mm-hmm. Your mom knew. Your mom was present. Yep. Verbally abusive. You were called fat. You were told that no one would ever love you. You were bulimic by age 15. Parents divorced at age 5. And so you said that drinking didn't make you feel crazy.
Yeah, it was the first time that I was able to block all of those voices out. So in my case, you know, my mother, which I need to preference the story by telling you all, like, this is not me trying to bash my family, my mother in any way, shape, or form. I love my mom very much. And it just, you know, hurt people. And I needed to understand that, which I've done in my recovery. But, you know, I dealt with that narcissism. So I was gaslit a lot. She lied to people about me being molested, even though when I tried to tell people about that, you know, I became the crazy one. And there was a lot of this denial of the abuse that was happening behind closed doors, which a lot of us have experienced. You know, that was why I drank. Like, if you had a mother like mine, you would drink like I did too. And so when I started drinking, I was able to like block all of that noise out. And I felt like I had my own voice back. And that was part of that armor, you know, it was like putting on the helmet. It was almost like Magneto, like you couldn't get in there when the alcohol was present.
And so the last couple of years of your drinking, you moved back into your mom's house.
Yeah, well, actually, so it was the last 3 months of my drinking. I moved back into my mom's house. Yeah, my family home.
Yeah. And things got bad enough for you. You found yourself in a detox.
Yeah.
Because that's what we do.
Yeah.
We do detox.
We beat ourselves down to that point where we need a little bit of assistance. Yeah, I was brought back here after I was in a very, very tragic domestic violence situation, and my father came and rescued me and brought me back to Colorado, and my mother was the only person who would take me in. And during that time, I was still drinking very heavily, though no one knew, which is still suspicious to me to this day, because I was like, how did you not know? Like, I was crying by 2 o'clock every day, telling you, like, I don't know why you did these things to me. But it was hard. I was reliving that pain in that house every day that I was drinking there. And it did. It got so bad one time. One day I woke up and I was surrounded by like 10, 11 pint bottles that were all empty, and I didn't remember buying them. I didn't remember drinking them. And I was on my knees and I was like, God, you saved me. You've saved me from all these horrible, horrific things. And now I need to know why. So if you're going to save me now, like now's your time. And within the hour, I started throwing up violently for the next 48 hours until I was so dehydrated that I was rushed to the ER, put in ICU. And, when I got in there, after 3 days of not drinking, I still blew a .274. And they were like, you should be dead. And at that point, I was like, you know what? I need a break from everything. So I had a little bit of money, and I scrounged that up and went to Denver Health and was in that detox, which I don't know if any of you have ever been in a detox like that, but that's a good one. It'll get you sober real quick. So that was where I ended up.
We just saw the hands go up.
Yeah. You know what's up then.
And what happened in that detox? Because it was a pretty profound moment that a lot of people don't experience until well into recovery, but you had this profound moment with God in detox.
Yeah. So while I was in there, you get to like day 3 or 4 of just like pure fluorescent light, and you're like, all right, I've gone completely crazy. And I was laying on my metal cot, which was so comfortable. I highly recommend them for your house if you ever need one. But I was laying there, and I just remember listening to these women that were coming in that were still intoxicated or like high on meth. There were a couple that were, close to ODing and were getting all of their like fluids pumped into them and stuff. And I was hearing my story over and over and over, just victim, victim, victim. Look at how hurt I am. Look at how awful my life is. And as I was laying there, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to live this life anymore. There's got to be a better way. And in that moment, God in spirit spoke to me and said, if you want that, you need to forgive them. You need to learn to forgive and let go and let me handle it. And that's what I did. I got a notebook while I was in there, and I basically did a 4-step. And if you're not familiar with AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, that's part of our 12-step program. The 4-step is looking at your part, your inventory, where you have found yourself in fear and anger and self-righteousness. And I laid it all out in that notebook and was able to really take a look at my part in it. So I was able to clean up my side.
So I want to ask you this part of your story. One, yes, I know what that's like. To hear God's voice saying, you need to forgive. Do you want to be free? Your mom was at that time in your life that your mom was diagnosed with a terminal illness?
Yeah, so I was in that detox, and I got out May 2nd, 2021, and that's the first day I consider myself fully sober. And 3 months after that day, we found out my mom was terminally ill. And it was very briefly after that I became her full-time caregiver. So I was, again, now here I was early in sobriety, living in her house, taking care of the person who was my biggest abuser. Yeah.
And let me ask you, do you forgive?
Oh, yeah.
And what's it look like?
It wasn't easy. I brought my big book with me because, whether you are in Alcoholics Anonymous or any of the A programs out there, or you're just, affected by somebody who should be in this program, if they're not, this book saved my life. And the first time my sponsor had me open this book and read the prayer I'm going to read to you, I literally chucked it at the wall and was like, no, I think not. You want me to do what? No.
And let me preface it with this. I asked Rielly to read this prayer when she mentioned it. I said, would you read that when you're telling some of your story? Because I asked her the question. I said, what's it like to forgive? And some of y'all can identify with this. When the person you are forgiving is not owning any of their pieces. They're not admitting their wrongs, but you do know forgiveness is still possible because forgiveness is letting go. But this prayer has helped many of us. And Rielly's going to read that prayer.
Yes.
What page is it on?
So we start on page 66 of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous and go into 67. This was our course. We realized that the people who wronged us were perhaps spiritually sick. Though we did not like their symptoms and the way these disturbed us, they, like ourselves, were sick too. We asked God to help us show them the same tolerance, pity, and patience that we would cheerfully grant a sick friend. When a person offended, we said to ourselves, "This is a sick man. How can I be helpful to him? God, save me from being angry. Thy will be done." And
I love that ending.
I do
Save
too.
me from being angry.
I know. And I really think about it. And when you say, like, do you want to be free? I really thought, do I want to be happy or do I want to be right? Because the reality was this person had really, really hurt me. And I was right to feel that way, but I wanted to be happy more.
Yeah. Now, my sponsor was here at the last service,
Oh.
and I think he was in the second row. And when he was leaving, he whispered in my ear, "Ryan, don't forget about 552. There's a great prayer on page 552. If you're struggling with this forgiveness stuff, I highly recommend it. You don't have to read it right now,
okay.
but maybe later you want to read 552.
Okay, yeah, we'll hit
It's a
that
good
later.
one. So if you haven't read 552, check it out.
Okay.
But Rielly, back to your story. I love what you said. I took a note of it when you said it. Because I had my iPad out, you said that forgiveness is digging so deep into yourself and your relationship with God that you discover a love you've never experienced. What was that like? What's that?
So, and I'll use this analogy again because I really did feel this way growing up. In my home where everything really was very abusive and toxic, when we would hug each other, it was like hugging cardboard. So, like the hugs weren't real. It was like trying to hug a brick wall almost. And I realized that, through this journey, I've looked for love in a lot of really strange places, whether it was through money, my house, my car, my cat, all these different things. But what I really wanted was to learn to love myself. No one had ever loved me. So I needed to find a way to do that. And in pursuing a relationship with God, God was able to show me how to find that love for myself. And that's what I seek in my relationships now. I don't want the superficial. I want that true love, that deeper than, surface level love. And that's what this has been, was God digging so deep in me and pulling out all of these dark pieces that I never could look at because I didn't want to. And that's what I drank over. And he laid them all out and he told me, I still love you even though you have these pieces. Can you find a way to love yourself too now, knowing I love you that much? And I have grace and mercy for you. I need you to do the same thing for yourself.
Yeah. So you recently had a friend whom we call normies. A normie is someone who you don't drink like Rielly drank. Don't drink like I drink, so you can have 1 or 2 glasses of wine and be just fine. You're called a normie. But this normie friend said to you, how are you not drinking yourself to sleep every night in the situation that you're in? You're a primary caregiver for your mom who was just diagnosed with a terminal illness. The relationship wasn't always pretty. It was very difficult. And how are you not drinking yourself to sleep every night? And I can't believe you're staying sober. And to her and others who might say that, what's your response?
I have done all of this with God's help. I would not be sitting here sober without God's help. I wouldn't be sitting here, just have celebrated a birthday sober without God's help and without this beautiful, loving community that I've immersed myself in. I had to choose. What was I going to seek? Was I going to continue to seek the darkness? Because let me tell you, when you do that, the darkest demons find you. I chose to seek the light, and I've done that with God's help, and you can too. So I highly recommend, if you have trouble finding faith, to look for somebody who has it as deeply as I do so that we can help you find yours too.
Beautiful. Some of y'all, if you were here at Sober Open Mic Night on Thursday night, Rielly was brave enough to take the stage. She wouldn't tell anyone what she was doing. She just got up here and she gave some motivation. She spoke some very beautiful words of hope to inspire others, and it was absolutely gorgeous. Rielly, final question for you. To someone who might be here tonight, really wrestling with forgiveness. I don't know how to forgive. They've been very hurt, wounded, betrayed, stepped on. What word of hope would you give?
I would have to tell you, you don't have to do it alone. You don't need to carry all of your wounds by yourself and try to patch them up all alone. When you are able to recognize that a lot of us have been that wounded and a lot of us have been in the trenches taking grenades and still find a way to throw them back in whatever way we can, come be a part of the community. Come help yourself find yourself here with God and with all these people who are willing to love you until you can love yourself.
Beautiful. Rielly will be sticking around for a little bit afterwards, I think so, right?
Yeah.
So if you want to connect with her, if you want to get to know Rielly more, if you've got questions for her, she'll be sticking around. She says she's an open book, and I believe it because she's an open book. So if you want to connect with Rielly, talk to her afterwards. Rielly Christine, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Rielly. Great to have you. All right, y'all, the way we close things down on a Saturday night here at Free is very similar to how we begin. We begin with celebrations. We lift up the good, but we close with heartaches, because what we learn of any community is people like us, we will try to carry burdens alone. And Rielly just reminded us we don't have to do this stuff alone. It's why we have community. It's why we have a God who hears the cries. So if you have a heartache, something you want to lift up, you need prayer for, encouragement for, some lifting upness for, well, I encourage you to raise your hand and just give us the heartache. And again, if you're online, if you're joining us from Facebook, put it in the comments. We'll heartache with you there. If you're on YouTube, put it in the comments, and we'll heartache with you there. Matt will have a mic, and Kiara has a mic. And just raise up your hand, and they will get you. Mike will take 3 minutes for this. All the way in the back.
Yeah, my name's Matthew. I'm an addict visiting from Costa Rica. I came back and I found out that my dad has terminal bone marrow cancer. And been trying to help him the best he can. But he just got through his second chemo injection, and he's decided that that's all he's going to do. He can't do the surgery for it because it's too dangerous to his health. So keep him in your prayers, and hopefully this works well for him.
All right, Matthew, prayers for your father. I'm glad you're with us tonight.
This Friday is the 16th year anniversary of passing of a dear friend who was 13 years old, and she died tragically. So it's just a rough week, and just prayers for me and her family and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for sharing that with us. Prayers for you and the family.
My worst enemy was my sister, and right now I want to pray for her because I really feel like she's struggling with her own demons.
All right. Praying for you and your sister. Glad you're here.
My friend Marcos lost his dad this week, so if we could lift him and his family up. He's unable to go back to Mexico to see him due to probation. And then I also have a friend who's struggling with fentanyl. She keeps relapsing on it, so if we could lift her up as well.
Yeah, lifting up Marco and his family and your friend.
My name is Chris. I'm an addict, and my son's mom is trying to litigate to have my parental rights taken away, even though I have 20 months clean, and take him out of the country to live permanently. And now I've got to stay in sober living to save money for lawyers again. So we just finished the last litigation 2 weeks ago, and please prayers for him and for her. I've got to pray for her and forgive her, and while I not fight against her, but fight for my son.
Prayers for you, Chris. Thanks for sharing that with us. I'm glad you're part of this community. All right, we're out of time. Matt, are you joining me up here again?
Yes, sir.
So our monitor's still out. So to join our online people, we gotta turn our butts towards the people to read the screen.
You want to know one of my favorite biblical passages?
Yes.
Jesus is being hung on the cross, and he says, "Forgive them, Father, for they don't know what they do."
Yeah. It's a good one. Mm-hmm. Forgive them, for they know not what they do. Yes. All right, you want the first one?
Stephen says, please pray for the Horick family. Ron, the father of the family, passed away from cardiac issues. The family can use prayer support. Thank you. Prayer, Stephen.
Derek Bunyan says, God, please help me to forgive Stephen Cisneros, who stabbed me in my spine and kidney, and help me to forgive myself for dwelling in fear, overthinking, resentment, and self-pity. Derek, prayers for you, man. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Nelms Hospitality Brokerage, please pray for our friend Michelle. She is in liver and kidney failure. She has to wait 6 months to 1 year for a transplant. Pray she keeps her stuff together. Prayers go out to Michelle.
Yeah. I think that's it. Thank you for being up here, Matthew. Well, if you call this place home, if this is your people, your tribe, your community, you should know each and every week I remind you that we exist partially because of your generosity here, your generous giving. In fact, without your generous giving, we quite simply don't exist. So I know many of you have made giving in this community, you've made it a spiritual practice in your life. We encourage that. You've made it a sacrificial practice in your life. We thank you for that. If this is your home, your community, we encourage giving. There's a giving box here just beside these doors. It says giving on it. And just outside these doors, there's a giving box. And there are, if you're not the cash type people like me, there are 3 ways to give online digitally. The first way is you can download the app. It's free to download, free spiritual community. All of our content, messages, guest storytellers are on there, and giving is on there. You can give once, weekly, monthly, however you want to do it, the same exact way on the app, on the website, freespiritualcommunity.com. You can do your giving there, or you can text the number on your screen. It walks you through a very simple set of instructions. All of these are safe and secure ways to give, and your generous giving helps keep the mission of breaking the silence of addiction thriving here in the community and across the country. So we thank you for being a part of that. Many of you know that we are also in a campaign called Home at Last, where we are purchasing this building. This will be our permanent home in November. We are trying to raise $1.3 million. We're right around, it's hard to get an exact number, but we're somewhere around that $850,000 mark. We're still waiting on to hear back from a couple of grants. And if you want to give to that campaign specifically on the giving, either on the app or the website, when you go to giving, you have to click Home at Last. It'll go directly to that campaign where we're trying to raise the funds to purchase this building without debt, which would be really, really awesome. And many of you know how important it is to have a permanent home, because in our history, just a measly 2 years ago, we were almost homeless in this free community. So you know the importance of having a place to call home. So thank you for being a part of that. There's the scanner thing you can scan too. The what's it called? The barcode? QR code. That's the word I was looking for. All right, y'all. Shall we go out with a prayer? Yeah, if you want, just open your hands, because it's a sign of openness. It's also a sign of releasing. Maybe you have someone to release, some things to release, some feelings to release. And we're trusting that God is in our midst, because God is always with us. And if you don't know the serenity prayer, it'll be on your screen. We pray it together, and it goes like this. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. And my free brothers and sisters, may you experience all kinds of grace and peace, and we'll see you next time.